So 2 members of our community, VFX Todd and Ebenezer, I can't remember, but 2 of you requested a little more information on the interior lighting, how we sort of did what we did, and I'm going to reveal a secret that's kind of shocking. Okay, so today we're going to go into lighting setups, interior lighting setups. This is one of multiple videos we're doing on these breakdowns because we have some BTS, and these are on the 6-figure secrets, 6-figure spots series that we've been doing. I don't know why I say it that way, but it's kind of fun. So that's where we're at. So what I want to do is just jump in and show you guys and gals and folks. So the way we'll go through that, first off, we'll be showing the graded spot so you can kind of see that. And then I think it's really important to talk about the lighting on the non-graded so that we don't influence it too much. There's a lot of VFX, not a lot, but there's some VFX in these shots where we painted some things out. And I kind of think it's better for you guys to see it raw and see what we're actually looking at. And then that'll be supplemented with BTS.
Yeah, that might be a good idea, maybe.
Really?
I just feel like
this is like, we're not really...
it's starting to feel like a stage.
Yeah.
Sound stage.
Right.
But let's look at this. I mean, this is all... Okay, so the first bit we're going to look at here is going to be the coffee man spot, is what we call it. But this is the coffee man spot, and here's the graded version of that spot. As you can kind of see, there's a nice grain to it. We decided to do this sort of ectochrome effect on the film, or on it, to give it sort of a film vibe, and that kind of plays through. And it starts to phase out here as he ages and time passes. It gets clearer and clearer till eventually he's on the boat. We removed most of the grain, and we are just all about the sunset and sort of the beauty side of things. Now, I presented these last time in anamorphic format or phantomorphic format because it was fake anamorphic. These were shot lens-wise, were on Summicrons. The majority of that camera-wise, well, I'll let you try and figure that out. But the majority of it was 2 different cameras, I'll tell you that much. All right, so we're going to look at these shots sort of broken down with no grade on it, and you can kind of see how flat it is. So this first particular shot here of her in the room, if you look, we have this nice dapple of sunlight coming in. There's you can tell where the primary light's coming from because you can see the shadow up here if you look at this light switch box. You can kind of see that space, and the art department did a great job of just dressing the set out. They didn't have these pops of color, which are brand colors that we worked in. But if you look at the back, there's a primary light source, there's a window. If you look in the top left-hand corner of that, you can just kind of see the bare edge of a light. That branch is a Cucaloris Supreme. That is a cut-down branch that we just placed in the window. It was a wide open space, but it felt a little overbearing, like there wasn't a lot of detail in it. And you can see that there's plenty of exposure. So if you actually look at the sun is beaming in kind of the wrong direction. But again, using light to your advantage, you can kind of cheat that out. And we talked about the grade and how it would play out. So what we have right outside there is a 575. Now that is that 2K lamp that we love so much. We've talked about it before. And we have B-roll to kind of show you how we had this rigged up. But that's the 575, right? So that light itself is an RE2K studio that the guts are pulled out, very easily pulled out. And it's a drop-in LED. And it's a daylight LED. So that's what we have coming through the window. Then coming through, you can't see it, and I'm going to jump to another shot here later on. So in this shot where he's kissing her, back towards camera side here, there's an actual, there's a sky panel. And so we have a sky panel kind of just glowing through the window ever so slightly, just basically doing a little bit of fill. So it's just kind of kissing into the window and lifting the general ambience of the room. The purpose of these in this initial front end of the spot was about the characters. We didn't want to overdress it with art. It's meant to represent a different time period. And there was a bit of discussion on set of how literal we were going with the time period. And ultimately, we didn't go that literal or not. We just, as they used this phrase, time agnostic. So whatever that means to you, that's what they used on set, and that's what we went with. All right, so going back to it, you can see there's little dips in lighting, like it's a little bit darker from the previous shot. He walks into the room, he crosses frame, we have some close-ups here. I didn't want to overly highlight this stuff. We did want it to feel somewhat real. So once we kind of set the look, and we did take a good bit of time to set the look in the room, maybe an hour and a half. Actually, I take that back. It was about 2 hours because we worked out the blocking, and then we adjusted the lights and just let it live a little bit. We let it breathe, and we wanted to feel real. We didn't want to make it overly stylized. This is a banking commercial, so you don't want to go too far down one path. So you can even see in the detail shots, there's a little bit of light on it, but there's no specials, right? We didn't go crazy with special lights. We did have 2 company moves this day, so we didn't want to get too into the weeds, so to speak. Now, if you've watched this channel enough, or you know about our content, normally we love to do lens flares, and so we did have a nice, beautiful piece of footage with this young fella here. His name is Mac. We also call him Clark because he's like Superman. The guy is like the prettiest dude ever, and I mean, he literally, his physique is like Superman. And so anyway, so Superman back here, Clark, he, if you look above his head where that lamp is, we did shoot some pieces where we do-si-doed the lamp in a little bit and got those little craft show lens flares. I liked it, client liked it, somebody else didn't like it, so somehow it didn't make the cut, so it got cut. I would have kept it just because it felt more romantic and dreamy, but then again, at the end of the day, I'm only here to execute what they need to get done. I'm here to help execute their vision, right? So that's one of the secrets is these 6-figure spots. Somebody, unless you're the agency involved, typically there's a whole lot of people involved that are making decisions above and beyond your pay grade. So you kind of have to humble yourself to the idea that you are a Ronin at this moment. You become that mercenary. You become that individual whose skill with the light and camera will provide them exactly what they need. So that's what your job is. Give them the best. Get the best performance you can if you're directing. And that's what it's about. That's one of the secrets. Give everything you can, even though you may or may not get to own the creative. Don't be upset if you can't. All right, so we go through him. They exchange a glance. Again, back to another close-up. You can kind of see the details are there. Nothing crazy. The only thing is, if you look at his hand there, his right hand holding the mug, you can see a little more light. That's where we did shift a little bit of the sky panel that was sitting outside the window there. We just kind of turned it just a scotch, so we got a little more light coming in just to bring him up a notch. And that was from Bernie, our gaffer.
Or we can just open the curtain all together and turn the light off.
Which I probably have a shot of him somewhere in here. It might be from a different day, but you'll get Bernie the gaffer. You can see some shadow. You get some nice light coming across this section here. Not my favorite shot in the world, to be honest with you, but it does work in kind of establishing that they're in the same room together. It's a geography shot. This kitchen was tiny. And when I say tiny, I mean it was like epically tiny. Like we were crammed into corners. I think I have some shots of that, but it was brutal. Like we were just packed into this little room, and then everybody else is in a bedroom because this was an Airbnb, which is a little pro tip for you. If you can negotiate Airbnbs to let you film there, typically they're very awesome looking sets, and you can get them for much cheaper rates, provided that the entire location is okay with it. But a lot of times you can use Airbnbs for great locations, and that's what we did in this case. It was much easier than building out a full soundstage. Back to the shot we already saw, which we know there's some front light on it in the sky panel, and you can see, again, that Reiki sunlight coming in. Very easy to control at this point. We're not losing a ton of light. And we shot this. It was about a 3 or 4 hour shoot to get all these pieces done. She hands off the sandwiches there, or whatever it is, his lunch. And again, not overly lit, sort of balanced out. Just let it be, el natural. Once we stepped into this hallway, we basically took a tungsten Kino and we salt and peppered it, and we just hit it up against the roof and let it glow up the room. There's some daylight. There's a whole lot of mixed light coming in, and we just decided to eat it. We were a little bit behind at this point, and so we decided to just eat this light somewhat, knowing that Jeff could neutralize and correct in post, which he did a fantastic job of. But I also wanted to show you, so we finished this location, right? This is the door to the Airbnb, or their apartment. And we finished this location, and then we traveled to a soundstage, which is at our offices. It was just right upstairs here, which you may hear some noise from because they're putting in new theater seats upstairs, which is a whole nother conversation we'll talk about one day. Lots has changed. Anyway, so we shot green screen where Clark here has aged, and he continues to get older, and you get a sequence of him kind of walking through. Now, it wasn't just as easy as shooting 3 green screen shots. We ended up shooting something like 12, each one with a wardrobe change. There were aging changes. We brought in a double or a secondary older version of Clark, whose name was Mark. Very confusing. And so we had a lot of shots in this space. Now, I made a couple of mistakes, and if you're seeing this frame here, frozen on him with a silver tie, you can clearly see that I let him cross out of the frame. So I made a miscalculation. I thought I'd have a little more width out of it, and I was wrong. So I did, in fact, have to roto these. So I got great keys, and then I had to roto the rest of it out to make the shots work the way we did. And we'll look at those here in a second. There's a match cut. The gentleman walks in. We're now on a boat in the middle of a beautiful sunset. It's a little darker than we wanted, and that's my fault. We grabbed this shot very last minute. It wasn't planned. It was one of those director moments where I just felt like this was a better frame. And then, of course, everybody loved it. The client loved it, all involved. As a side note, in the original spot, or when you look at the final spot again, if you pay attention to this door, it's not the best work ever, but there's a whole bunch of VFX because they did not like that this door looks a little bit aged. I wouldn't have noticed it ever, but I understand their point. You know, it's good details. Drone shot. This was an Inspire 2, sunset, sunrise. You can cheat the same, right? Doesn't really matter. You also notice there's a guy sitting up in the tower here. He's standing up. We didn't worry about that so much. We just let it be what it is. The guy in the tower is the boat captain. And if you look at the final print again, you will see that he has been VFX'd out. So let's look at the final spot now that's got a grade on it. And you can kind of see how that lighting played into it. We let those highlights work into our favor to give it that film sort of grain look. So here we go with the spot. There she is in the kitchen. Again, see how the details just work? It feels like it's lived in. It's not, nothing's being overly highlighted. Nothing's being brought to too much attention. A little bit of mismatch there. Nothing's being brought to too much attention. It's just got a sort of even balance all the way through it until we hit this back half of the spot where people are enjoying themselves on a boat, beautiful sunset situation, all that good stuff. Now, that's one of the 2 interior spots we had, and that one's got some exterior, of course, there on the end. So if we want to look at the next one,
Like that?
Yeah.
only when you go to
And then
like, gosh, this is going to be so
second AC I
fucking
have
fresh.
Alex, he's
That's
super,
not good.
super good.
Yeah, what's that? This green thing is fucking
So if you're
fresh.
hard camera stuff too, he's really.
Oh, there's a couple of things that are fun in this that aren't really lighting related, and I'll do a bigger breakdown on this in case anyone's interested. There's a lot of VFX in these spots, and this is something where Jeff can talk through and even give you a tutorial on how we use DaVinci to do some of these effects. Now, I'm not talking about Fusion. I mean, quite literally, we use the color correction tools in DaVinci to handle some of these. So this spot is called Chair, and Chair was a just another variation on one of these. We shot Chair the same day we shot the first home. So in this situation, and this is secret number 2, not that they're numbered, but it's another one of the secrets for 6-figure spots. We shot 2 spots in a day in some cases, and this was a 4-day shoot. So we shot these 2 spots because it was a single location. And so what we did is we made sure that in thinking that way, we thought about the location itself, and that's what we'll see in this spot. Pay attention. You've seen the spot before, and we'll watch it again, but pay attention to the surroundings. Look how bright the actual spot is. And then when you even see the non-graded version, you can see that color difference. Also pay attention to the bike. Notice the color of the bike here on the screen before we press play here is a kind of a bluish color. Notice the cabinet on the left-hand side is a sort of gray color. If you look on the bottom of that left-hand side, you can kind of see that the gray has a just an ever so slight color variation in it, and you'll understand why here when I show you the raw footage. But here's that spot. So she walks in carrying in the chair. She sets it down. She picks it up. She kind of moves through the space. It's light and airy. We didn't overly nitpick this slight pink shift here. We decided to eat it, and she sits back down on the chair. It's a very simple spot, right? You have a little daylight corner going on. She's happy. I bought a new chair. Yay, good for you. So let's kind of look at how the spot actually works. So first off, we land on this first frame non-graded, and if you remember, you're keeping score, that bike is kind of a mint green, and that dresser is definitely not the same color. It's a nice brighter green, and when you grade it, it's a deep green. It's a very poppy color of green. The problem is that is not bank color, so we knew going in, instead of pulling all this stuff out, or pulling out this green dresser that came with the location, We all liked the shape of it. We liked where it was placed. We knew that we were going to do a VFX shot and use DaVinci to key it out. So there you go. So we didn't want to overlight it and make it harder on ourselves. So the general atmosphere in this room, the lighting that went up in this room, is a sky panel going up and it's just bouncing softly off the ceiling. It's just a very simple sky panel shot. Shooting off of a white ceiling, bringing up the ambience, general ambience in the room. In the bathroom where she's coming from, which you can see her foot here as she kind of walks in, where she's coming from there, we used a hive. So we had our hive light and again, daylight balance, and it was just shooting in a shaft of light just to give us a little bit of glow. There are windows along that wall, but not where she was coming from. She was actually walking in from the bathroom in this small apartment as opposed to the doorway. And we wanted to make it feel more like the doorway. So again, she walks in, it's very evenly lit. She sets down a piece and there we can kind of see the wide shot and a prime example of what I'm referring to. So in this corner over here, you can see her face. Right parallel to her face in that space, right over there, that little dark area, there's the hive light. You can actually see just a pinch of spill right here. But that hive light's shining out and it's just glowing up this side of the room. We just wanted to bring up the light a little bit on this side. Meanwhile, the sky panel is, and you can see how much brighter it is, but the sky panel is over here where the clothing rack is. It's on the left-hand side of the frame a little bit. That sky panel is just literally soft light into soft. So it's just ambient bounce, bringing the whole room up, making it feel just not warm, but just bright. Just kind of a vibe, right? It's just creating a vibe in the space. We really wanted to make sure that the color pops that the art director placed in worked into our favor. She was very conscious of how we were going to light the room. We talked about it ahead of time. And again, notice the green dresser and the bike that we changed colors of later on. So as we kind of go through there, she just crosses through. It's a very simple scenario. Now here, what we've done is that light is still in play. So the light panel is still playing. We've just backed it up against this window. It is just barely out of frame. In fact, it was one of those like just barely frame it out. So we edged it to the frame and then knocked it out. And you can see where the plant is. You can see that there's a shadow flowing in, which on this back wall here, where that plant is, and that's from the hive light kicking the daylight through. Now, one of the mistakes I made, and this is on me, and Jeff and I talked about it, is I let these tungsten bulbs play because I thought it would be a nice contrast. I probably should have swapped them out or just turned the lamp off. I wanted the lamp off, the client wanted the lamp on, and the downside was I didn't have the bulbs to replace it. It turned out these weren't, I usually carry LED bulbs with me, always, just so you can pop them into a light fixture and be done. Turned out these bulbs weren't full-size LEDs. They were the micro sockets, so they weren't Edison's normal Edison size. They're like the small ones, and I didn't have those in my kit. I do now, but I didn't have them in my kit, so we ate the tungsten lights that were coming through, and it did mess with the grade a little bit in the end. Not my favoriteest thing, and I didn't really like the way it looked. Jeff and I mean, again, I take credit for it. It's on, not credit, but I take the blame, I should say. I wasn't super happy with it in that particular instance. So she crosses through the frame. We're into a close-up here. So we re-dosy-doed the lights a little bit here. And you can see there's a definite lens mismatch. So we went from, so just so you know, so this wide shot here is a Cooke S4, and it's an 18 mil. And then we instantly go to a Summicron C. I believe this is a 50 maybe. And you can immediately, maybe it's a 35, you can immediately see the difference. I mean, the warmth in those Summicrons versus the sort of cool element of those Cooke S4s, it's a pretty drastic difference between the lenses. And this is all shot on the same camera, same sensor. And that's where I think if you're looking at camera tests or you're doing this other stuff, if you're not looking at on the same lens, it is kind of hard to evaluate it at the end of the day because there's too many factors. So if you're not matching the lens and you're really looking at camera tests, I mean, the proper way, you know, is to match the lens best you can. Can't always do that, but that's the best way I like to do it because there are color variations from sensor. There are color variations that are going to come through from the glass itself, which we see here. So we just brought the sky panel in a little bit to bring her up. I believe we even had a bounce over here. Geo Key Grip was holding just a small bounce. You can actually see the sky panel a bit if you look into this corner right here. You can see this highlight through here, and that looks kind of like it's a foggy sort of, you know, dusted window, but instead it is actually a little bit of sky panel light hitting that side. No big deal, no one really notices. She turns, sits back down. You can see shadow play here, but it's not really affecting her too much. We had a little bit of a kiss. You can see a little more of it here. And again, sky panel. It's only 2 lamps in here. These practical lamps in the background, these tungsten lamps are doing absolutely nothing. They're not helping one bit for what we're trying to do. They're just kind of there, frustratingly there. She sits back down. We punch in for a close-up. So there we are with her. You got a nice eye light in her eye, which is a combination of that bounce. And then we also have the hive kind of do-si-doed around. You can see there's a little more shadow here, still some here, but we put a little more light on her to bring her up. And then watch the variation between this Summicron lens and that Cooke. Look at the cool difference from raw image. It's ever so slight, but it's enough to me that the coolness definitely is a change. This is punched in slightly. They didn't want to cut back to the straight raw, so in the edit, since it was a 1080p deliverable, we shot 4K. We punched in ever so slightly to kind of break it up a bit. And that's the end of the spot. So let's look at the grade again. And again, look at the bike difference. You can, the bike's now blue. The dresser is gray. The bike was a whole separate conversation that maybe I'll talk about another time. But here's the graded spot. You can definitely see we added some warmth. We brought some character to it, but we didn't, again, want to make anything feel too over the top. These are meant to feel like real spots. These are real life moments. That's kind of the point. Sometimes bank spots are like pharmaceutical spots, and they're a little too unrealistic. And the approach we wanted to take was lift things up, make things magical, but don't go so far away from realism that you detach your audience from the situation. So that, a bank should be with you every day, right? They should help you every day. They should be part of your daily life. And that's kind of the approach we decided to take with the lighting element, is keep it natural, keep it simple, let shadows play where they need to. Don't make anybody ugly from them, but let them play the way they need to, let them fall off, and expedite the process. It was more about performance and nuance than it was big negative fill and kind of going with the darker sort of dramatic tone, which is, again, one of those secrets I mentioned earlier, is that you're a mercenary for hire. Part of it is you bring your thoughts to the table, and I certainly did. Visually, I knew we shot on a variety of different cameras. We had the right tools for the job, the right lenses for the job, for the most part. And so we wanted to make sure that those things lined up best we could. So that's the interior lighting element for Six-Figure Secrets, Six-Figure Spots. For these 2 spots, these are the most interior we had. Everything else was daylight exterior for the most part. The plant shop has 1 interior shot. It's silhouette, very much to it. But that was sort of the approach we took. And the plant shop we'll do next, and I will talk about the art department side of things, which is super important and is, again, one of the tips that falls into these Six-Figure Secrets. That's one of the secrets, is having a good art department, because really that's where a lot of the money is going to go on certain types of spots. These are very simple spots on paper until you look at how broad or how grand you want it to feel, and what you want it to feel, the audience to experience. All right, that's it. I know it's a long talking head. It's a breakdown video. I showed you some BTS. I don't know what else you want from me. I hope you're having a great day. I believe in you. Hopefully you believe in me. And if you believe in magic, skitty boopity bop. I don't know the words, so I'm gonna stop.